It's almost New Year's, and 2025 has been brutal. And I've been thinking a lot about New Year's resolutions, guilt, and how unhelpful both of them are. I'm Adam, I have a PhD in atmospheric physics, and I'm here to help you make sense of the changing planet we all share. And for a little while now, I've not really been sure what to say. Don't get me wrong, there is so much to say right now. Our climate is changing like never before, and it's impacting us like never before. On top of that, we're seeing unprecedented pushback on climate action, and I've got a long list of topics I do want to cover, and I'm still making short videos here and on Instagram. But I've been struggling to find the words beyond just sharing little bits of news. And it's really not like me to be without words. But right now, I honestly feel pretty overwhelmed. Like nothing I can say or do can match the intensity of the moment. And that's a feeling that's exacerbated by all the things that aren't directly climate things. I'm not going to lie, it's been a tough year for me personally, with profound emotional and physical challenges. And then, of course, this is going on with the backdrop of 2025, seeing a world growing more hateful and more violent by the day, a world filled with ambivalence or even enthusiasm for the most horrific acts. And then with all this, that overwhelm can freeze me, and in turn that makes me feel guilty for seeing all these issues and not doing more, not finding the words that do justice to this moment. And so I figured that that's what I'd talk about today, about guilt, how senseless it can be when it comes to climate change, and how maybe we can be a bit kinder to ourselves, as well as to our planet, to our home. And actually, I know just the person to talk with about all this. This is my friend Sarah. She's a renewable energy engineer and environmentalist. But actually, we didn't get to know each other through our environmental work. We met in a German class. Was für einen krassen Zufall, oder? As part of her work, Sarah started The Guilty Environmentalist
to explore individual guilt and how it intersects with the environment, and trying to flip that to make individuals more powerful and moving towards action over guilt.
The Guilty Environmentalist is on Instagram and on Substack. I'll put links below for you to click on. A major part of me and Sarah's friendship revolves around action and emotion, discussing what we do, what we don't, what we could, what we can't, and how all of that makes us feel. And guilt is definitely a common denominator.
The more I found out about environmental issues, the more I found out that I was doing things wrong. And rather than take action, I just became filled with guilt.
Yeah, this sounds familiar. And this might be something that you encounter in your daily life too. It's a feeling that's not unique to making YouTube videos about climate change. It can crop up in the most mundane of settings.
Going to the supermarket, you're looking at the groceries and being like, I shouldn't buy something in plastic, but I should get something vegan because that's better for the environment. Constantly, I'm calculating what's the best thing for the environment, and that obviously leads to guilt and being frozen.
We can get so caught up in what we choose to do that we end up choosing nothing and checking out, just giving up. But the reality is we're often comparing the relatively small choices we make to the vast magnitude of the problem, stuck in the supermarket with the weight of the world on our shoulders. We can become hyper-conscious of our every misstep and put even more pressure on ourselves when it comes time to, say, choose our next meal or script our next video.
This focusing on what we've done wrong in a system that doesn't have a lot of opportunities for us to do the right thing freezes a lot of people.
And being frozen is useless. I mean, unless you're an ice sheet. Comment below if you're an ice sheet. But for the rest of us, being frozen means that all our energy, all our care for the world and people around us gets transformed into nothing, into inaction. Actually, I said it was useless, but the reality is us being frozen can be very useful indeed for some.
If we as individuals are feeling guilty, we aren't engaging collectively in climate action. We aren't protest and we aren't keeping our politicians accountable.
Look, I don't know you and your life, but unless you're an oil executive or like Taylor Swift, you're not responsible for climate change. Please don't come for me, Swifties. Come for Taylor's private jet. Yes, our actions contribute to the problem. More on that in a second. But we exist in a system that centers around continued burning of fossil fuels. You might have heard that fossil fuel companies like BP played a major role in popularizing the carbon footprint, a way of placing the responsibility of climate change and solving it at our feet. But of course, we can't single-handedly or single-footedly solve climate change. And fossil fuel companies pushing this narrative shifts their attention from them and pushes us to feel overwhelmed and guilty. And then we're too busy stuck with a dilemma about what to buy in the supermarket to demand the structural changes that we really need to halt climate change. Or I sit here trying to script a video, trying to make the YouTube algorithm work, and I feel like the fact that climate change is still happening is a sign that I suck at what I do. I really need to work on that whole not feeling solely responsible thing. But in the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe, I guess. Okay, so guilt sucks. It sucks up all our energy. So what's the alternative? Well, I'll tell you what the alternative isn't: giving up, throwing up your hands and saying, I'm not responsible, and doing nothing achieves nothing. And like I say, I don't know you. But if you're relatively wealthy and or live in a relatively wealthy country, then you do contribute disproportionately to climate change. I'm not saying that to make you feel guilty. I'm saying that so you know you can make a difference.
I want people to feel powerful. One of the examples I always think about is that video of the turtle with the straw coming out of its nose went around. And within 3 or 4 months, every single pub had paper straws. And now we have things like the EU directive to ban single-use plastic. So these small individual changes like refusing single-use plastic straws flow through to huge societal changes.
This gets to the heart of something that we still so often get wrong when we talk about climate change. We either think about our individual actions as the things that have to solve this massive societal, economic, political issue, and then we feel paralyzed by guilt. Or we argue that the fact that climate change is a structural problem means our individual actions don't matter at all. But our actions as individuals have power precisely because we aren't really individuals. We're parts of society, parts of the structures that need to change. And so actions that we can take do feed into societal shifts, especially when they're parts of a broader movement. I often think about shifts to plant-based foods, something that was barely discussed just a few years back and is now featured on menus all across the world. Now, just because we have this power, it doesn't mean we can or should be doing every single thing. That's just a recipe for exactly the kind of freezing that we're trying to avoid here.
Pick the thing that's really important to you. Being okay with not doing everything.
For me, personally, I want to live my life so that it's gradually more and more consistent with my values. And even though I get comments saying stuff like, if you've ever driven or bought anything or exhaled, how can anyone take you seriously on climate change? I know that being 100% aligned with my values is a completely unrealistic, unobtainable goal. But for me, life is about the journey, always trying to do a little bit better where I can. And a part of that process is sharing the journey, discussing the changes you make with those around you. Like, I would love it if you did that right now. It genuinely means so much to me reading the comments about all the different actions that you take in your lives. And don't share in a way that's designed to make the rest of us feel guilty, but with the goal of helping the people around you, helping us feel empowered in our actions as well.
Criticizing people for what they're doing wrong often leads to walls going up, and giving people knowledge and skills to change is a much more effective way.
And while we're talking about more effective ways, I want to really emphasize that the point of this video isn't that you should be cutting your emissions. I'm not going to do the BP marketing team's work for them. Addressing your own environmental impact is just one of the things you can do if you care about protecting our home. But it's also vital that we push directly for the structural changes we need, and that we raise the volume of the conversation. Just like with our own emissions, there's loads of options, but don't feel like you need to do everything. Work out what works for you.
Join an activist group. If you're feeling really down, go to a protest, because you'll be surrounded by a lot of people that care.
Collective action is so valuable, not only because together our voices are louder and we actually get stuff done, but also just on a selfish individual level. For me, personally, it is so valuable to have people in my life, in person and in my community on YouTube, who do share the same fears, hopes, guilts as I do.
Yeah, also you can just learn from them. Like, you get the train around to travel a lot, and that's like inspiring to me. Sometimes when I'm like, how am I going to get there? I'm like, what would Adam do?
Well, I'm really glad to hold you to account in your subconscious.
Yeah. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the sphere of influence we have on people in our lives.
It's funny. I can name the people who inspired me to work on climate change, to start talking about it, to avoid flying, to start a YouTube channel dedicated to explaining climate science. But despite knowing how much my actions are down to the influence of others, I often discount my influence on others, imagining my words and actions don't impact the people around me. So I guess this is a little reminder, as much for me as it is for you, that when we act, when we talk, when we push for changes, the effects can ripple out far beyond what we'd imagine. Okay, but speaking of when we act, let's talk about New Year's resolutions. They can kind of suck, right? They can be so all or nothing, and more often than not, that means nothing. But at the same time, I personally like New Year's. In the Jewish tradition that I grew up with, it presents an opportunity for reflection, for what we could have done differently in the passing year. Not to wallow in guilt, but to reflect on a new approach going forward, and to reflect on the ways we might be fortunate and might be able to share that fortune with others. So if resolutions suck, how can we reflect on the year to come in a kinder, more positive way?
I really like the concept of theme. So rather than having a specific goal, environment could be your theme of the year. And when you're doing things, you can be like, is this good for the environment? Does this align with my values and how I want the world to be?
I think for myself, definitely, I can sometimes see myself thinking, oh, well, I didn't manage to achieve this, or this thing is unrealistic for me, so I won't even bother.
Yeah, which again is that guilt and that perfectionism of, I'm never going to meet that goal, so I just won't try. Whereas I think the theme enables you to adjust based on your personal circumstances, have a bit of kindness to yourself and say, I did the best I could in that context.
So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be aware that 2025 sucked in a deeply personal and in deeply planetary ways. And 2026 will, of course, bring its own challenges. But I'm going to try to do the best that I can given those circumstances, here and everywhere that I have a voice. And I'd love it if you join me in that, knowing that our bests and our voices are different, but that if we use them well, they can complement each other beautifully. So thank you to Sarah for helping me navigate some difficult emotions. Thank you all for being here, being a part of this community of climates. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what people who care can do as we unfreeze ourselves in 2026. Let me know if you've got any themes lined up for the new year. I'm thinking mine might just be to do with power and kindness. And before 2026 hits, here's how far we've come and how far we still have to go on the path to solve climate change. Okay, until next year. Bye. Was für eine...